Joining us now is a friend of the show, Professor Harvey Kaye, and none other than State Senator Nina Turner, who is running for the 11th Congressional District in Ohio. Good morning to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Ben.
It is always a pleasure. I know there's a lot to talk about, and whenever you all come on, one of the things that we like to talk about is economic justice. One of the stories I was going to cover this morning is that Deutsche Bank is predicting another recession. Now, all of us of our age group, but even millennials now, younger people, have lived through multiple recessions, wars, climate change, so many things that are happening. I think it's really important for people to understand that we actually do have a right to live a better economic life. I don't know who wants to begin, Sister Turner or Professor Kaye, but talk to us about this economic Bill of Rights that we've been talking about on a regular basis on this show.
I always appreciate when Nina leads off.
Well, thanks, Dr. Kaye, and it's really good, again, to be here with you, Ben, and also Georgia. So, that prediction is absolutely correct. We saw it coming even before they predicted it. And before the pandemic, people were already in economic pain, economic challenge, economic difficulty. And most of these difficulties are systemic, meaning that the poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class in this country are being crushed by a system that does not see their intrinsic value, therefore does not ally itself or lay itself to a pattern that lifts them and the people that they love. And so when you are already at the lower rings of an economic system that rewards and worships oligarchs, you're going to catch a pretty hard time. And that is why the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights is so important. And I definitely salute both Executive Director Alan Minsky of PDA, Progressive Democrats of America, and the one and only Dr. Harvey Kaye for bringing back to the forefront the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights, which is rooted in the vision that President FDR had for this nation, and also folks that came after President FDR, which is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of the greatest unionists of the 20th century, Asa Philip Randolph, and so many other folks whose names we don't really know. A human thriving is that you want to live good and you want to live better. And if you have children and grandchildren, you want to know that they are going to inherit something better than what you have. That is a natural instinct. And what is happening in American economics, it's the antithesis of what it means to be human and have a thriving, to be able to live good. But we can do better. And so with that, I think Dr. Harvey Kaye can come on in here and wrap this package up.
One thing I want to say, and I think I warned everybody beforehand, before I say too much about the Economic Bill of Rights, I got to say it's only 5 days away until what may be the most significant primary that we will see in this truly profound primary year. And why do I say that? Because on Tuesday, the voters in Ohio, and I'm most concerned about the voters in the Cleveland area, will choose their nominee for Congress next year. And I have to say that I'm a fan, to put it clearly, of Nina Turner. I want everyone to realize that even now, donations, volunteers are essential to drive home what I hope to be a major victory on Tuesday and then a victory in November. And why do I say this? Look, I've been telling people for some time, I know that Ben has heard me in the past say that a really progressive candidate is not only the candidate who fights for you or promises to fight for you, but it's the candidate who inspires the fight in you. And if there is anyone in the political scene today who in many ways, I mean this sincerely, who kind of reflects that kind of FDR spirit, because that's what he was known for doing in the 30s and 40s. It is Nina Turner. Okay,
That's right.
She inspires me. I can tell you that. Now, why does that happen? It's not just because she's a great speaker. She's got a fabulous presence. It's also because more than any other candidate, she appreciates historical memory, historical consciousness, and historical imagination. And I think, and as a consequence, I've teamed up as much as I can with Nina to make the point that we need an economic bill of rights. And to my thrill and excitement, if you go to her website where you can donate, you will see at the top of her list, the top of her commitment is the pursuit of an economic bill of rights. And let me say, this goes back to 1944, when Franklin Roosevelt in the State of the Union message called for an economic bill of rights, knowing from polling that the majority of Americans, 85% of Americans, that was like 75% of Republicans included and 95% of Democrats, wanted after the war the guarantee of health care, the guarantee of a job and a living wage. You go right down the list. And by the way, at that time, as radical as it sounded, the overwhelming majority of Americans wanted it. And today, the overwhelming majority of Americans want that economic bill of rights. Now, what will Nina Turner bring to Congress? I'm merging these two questions. What's really significant is there are already a host of bills presented, advanced in Congress that address each of those economic bill of rights that you're now seeing on the screen. The Progressive Caucus, most especially those folks we know of as the Squad, have introduced bills to address respectively the right to a useful job that pays a living wage, Presley's resolution for a federal jobs guarantee. You'll see as it goes through the right to a voice in the workplace through a union and collective bargaining. Representative Bobby Scott's Protect the Right to Organize Act, AKA the PRO Act, okay, which literally revived the 35 National Labor Relations Act. Pramila Jayapal's Medicare for All Act, which is our call for the right to comprehensive quality health care, right? The right to a complete cost-free public education and access to broadband internet. There's a College for All Act. Jamal Bowman's Green New Deal for Public Schools Act. Skip over the next name. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal for Public Housing Act addresses the right to a decent, safe, affordable housing. The right to clean environment and a healthy planet. It is all laid out there in several. Cori Bush, Andy Levin, Ro Khanna's bills. Ayanna Pressley's American Opportunities Act, the right to a meaningful endowment of resources at birth, which gets at the idea of what we think of as baby bonds, okay, which will restructure over time the wealth distribution in America, not only by way of class, but decidedly by way of race and ethnicity. The right to sound banking and financial services. The right to an equitable and economically fair justice system. And by the way, rather than my racing as I'm doing, you can go to Common Dreams and just type in 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights, and you will see the three pieces that we presented there. The first, the manifesto. The second, the evidence that Democrats, not Democrats generally, but progressives in particular, already endorsed the idea of an economic Bill of Rights. But now let me get to the key thing here. What is missing in all of this, and this is why Nina Turner's presence in Congress is so essential. And I'm not saying that other members of Congress are not thinking in these terms, but Nina has embraced the vision of an economic Bill of Rights. And let's face it, this November, we're going to have an election which is not only going to decide whether or not we're going to continue anything that might be close to something like a Build Back Better Act, which right now is dead in the water. It's a question of whether or not we're going to continue democracy in America.
That's right.
And right now, the answer is not to retreat. The answer is to become all the more dynamic and aggressive and imaginary. Look, when we face crises of a mortal sort, the only way we have defeated our enemies and transcended those crises is by going progressive, indeed, excuse my language, radical. And the Economic Bill of Rights will remind Americans of what the Democratic Party is supposed to be about, what the United States is supposed to be about. One last thing. I know I got to say one last thing. A. Philip Randolph. A. Philip Randolph in 1926 gave a speech, okay? And in this speech, he said, I love this speech. He said, look, contrary to what too many historians have been telling Americans in the 1920s, it was African Americans who brought, with federal troops undeniably, democracy to Dixie. And he said, ever since that time, African Americans have served ably and significantly in the American labor movement. And then he said, in a prophetic fashion, perhaps in the 20th century, it will be African Americans who bring economic democracy to America. Well, maybe we're a little late. Maybe we're a little late. But Nina Turner can be that kind of voice and that kind of leader to inspire her fellow progressives and literally inspire America. I apologize.
No, go, absolutely. And then Georgia, I'll yield to you because I was just going to laud Nina Turner a bit more, because the more we can talk about her campaign, I feel like the closer we can get to those things. Go ahead, Sister Ford.
Yeah, I mean, I want to double down on what Professor said there, and you said so much. When you talk about this being radical, however, there's so much of it that just feels like basic human rights. And that's right. Everything that you said about Senator Turner, from her being an inspiration to her inspiring us all to fight, is that's so right. true, because of her authenticity and her love for people and her courageousness to keep going. And so it is always an honor to have you here on the show with us. We're all fans. The one question I do have is, with this bill, how do people in other cities, in other states, connect with their local lawmakers or representatives and ask them or encourage them, that as constituents, they want and they expect them to support this bill?
Is that to me or to Senator Turner?
Senator Turner, jump in there.
To either one.
Okay. You bring up a very good point, that we don't necessarily have to wait for the feds to get a clue, because so often it takes them too long to get the clue. We can make these things local. For example, across the country, municipalities have passed a $15 an hour minimum wage. So have states. And so we don't have to wait for the feds to get it. This can and should bubble up from the local level, and we got to put pressure on the feds. It would be beautiful if those two pressures met each other, where you have a whole host of elected officials on all levels of government pushing for a living wage, pushing for universal health care. We know that, for example, in the great state of California, they tried it. They've tried it at least twice, over the last 10 years. And the more they try, there's going to become a breaking point where it is going to happen. And if you have states like California and New York that actually produce universal health care, a version of universal health care in their states, that brings a good pressure to other states in the United States of America. So I would recommend that people go to Common Dreams, download the 3 or 4 articles that have already been penned by Dr. Harvey Kaye and Executive Director Alan Minsky. So happy to have been able to help and lend some advice to that. And that way, the constituencies, the voters, the activists will have that information in hand, and then go to your elected officials on all levels and ask them to introduce and model the pieces that are already there in Congress. So that way, locally, regionally, and on the state level, we can show the feds how this is done. And then at the same time, because these things need to happen at the same time, putting pressure, putting the hammer on the folks on the federal level, because the federal level has the biggest stick. It will have the greatest impact, and we shouldn't have to piecemeal liberty and justice for all. It should be for all across this great nation. But we're not certainly going to sit back and wait. Georgia, that was an excellent question.
Hello, somebody. I'm telling you, there's not a morning. Sister Turner, let's talk about your race just a little bit as it pertains to these nuances, because there is a difference, right? Let's be clear. Like, not everyone who has a D by their name is going to be supporting these types of policies, Medicare for all these critical issues. And it's not just in your race, but all across the country, right? This is just standard operating procedure at this point, where we have a faction of this Democratic Party who says that they care about the people, but they're not enacting policies. Talk about the differences in your race.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between somebody that is going to vote the right way compared to somebody that's going to fight the right way. At some point, you have to draw the ire of the status quo, of the ruling class, if in fact you truly are fighting for the least of these, our sisters and our brothers and our family and friends. That is the major difference that I am willing to and have proven myself, even in this moment, even after the special election, Georgia and Ben and Dr. Kaye. Certainly I went through the stages of grief over that election. election because of what happened, the levels of dark money that came into this race to try to pollute and dilute the minds of the people who live, work, and play here. And we do have to deal with an inordinate influence that the oligarchs have on policies, and they are the major reason, besides getting elected officials that have some intestinal fortitude. Since this is a PG show, I'll keep it right there. I want to say something more more striking, but I'll just keep intestinal fortitude. We need those two things. We have to get the influence of big money out of politics, and we need to elect more people who have intestinal fortitude. So when people talk about I voted or I'll vote or if it comes my way, those not the people you want to elect. You want to know that of matters of great importance, like your health, your well-being, the well-being of your children, your children's children, whether or not you can breathe clean air, eat clean food, drink clean water, like just the basic things. We can't even go past, Maslow's hierarchy of needs on that base. It's the physiological need. We can't even get to self-actualization until we get a system that understands very clearly that the basics that this progressive movement is talking about is something that people deserve. And that is why I am so in love with the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights. Being able to walk down memory lane with Dr. Kaye and Alan is a very big deal because it is in us. And when Dr. Kaye talks about being radical, I think it was Dr. Angela Davis who let us know radical just means getting to the root. So it's not a word to be afraid of. You want people who are willing to get to the root of the conundrum, of the problem. And that is what made FDR so successful, even though there were flaws there. Don't get us wrong. We know the racialized nature of some stuff needed to be fixed. But here we are in the 21st century. We have a template that we can enhance. Thanks to FDR, who said, "Judge me by my enemies." He told the status quo of his day, "I welcome your hatred." Well, we have the same status quo. It's called oligarchs. It's the oil industry. It's the pharmaceutical industry. It is the healthcare industry. That is the sick care industry. They do not want us to have universal health care. They do not want us to have a Green New Deal. They do not want you to live a good life. All they want to do is jet up to space and monk it up there. And after they got done messing up Mother Earth, they're going to leave the rest of us down here. We can have better. But more importantly, I want the people of this country to know in their soul that they deserve better. Because once you comport yourself in that manner, that you know that you know that you know that you know that you deserve better, then you will never allow anybody to walk over you, to mess over you, to mess with what you love. And that is planet, that is people, baby. And charity starts at home and spreads abroad. And so we got to get a lot more charity here. And for God's sakes, absolutely has to spread abroad. We are citizens of this nation, and we are also citizens of the world. What happens over there happens over here. So we need this 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights. We deserve this 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights.
That's right. And when you think about why we need it even to expand, look, I think before it was 61% of Americans were in the middle class. That's now shrunk down to 50%. The middle class is shrinking. And not that, being in the middle class is something that's luxurious, but at least people were able to buy homes and meet some of those basic needs and pass a little something down to their children. And that's becoming more and more out of reach as the economics in our nation are shifting. The rich is becoming richer, the poor is becoming poor. And those numbers to me tell me that something like this is so needed. Even you have families who are out here shopping for homes right now. Homes are selling for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 over the asking price. If you're on that bottom end of middle class, there's no way you can even compete. You could be approved for a home loan and not even be able to buy a house because homes are selling way more than market value. And so, I think that you both have touched on why these bills are so needed from an economic standpoint, from an environmental standpoint. That's right. And how people can get in and support. The date you mentioned briefly, Professor, that's approaching soon is primaries, correct?
On Tuesday, indeed, and I want to repeat, the most important primary of this election season is this coming Tuesday in Ohio. Everyone must do what they can this weekend to boost an already dynamic campaign by Nina Turner to send her to Congress next year. I can tell you that I'm not even thinking about any other primaries. This is the only one that in my heart, I believe is fundamental to the democracy in America.
Absolutely. This Tuesday, Sister Turner, Nina Turner, I am going to be supporting you, and everyone who around us who supports you, we're going to be throwing all of our support to push you. I just want to say this for anyone who may not know, like FDR said, you'll know a person by their enemies. And Sister Turner, I like the people who don't like you. I like that list. It's because I don't like them either. Those people who are lining up against you to make themselves your enemy, those are the type of people we don't want in our coalition, because we need people who are going to fight with integrity. That's just my bully pulpit for a second. I want you to know that we've got your back, because we also know who are the people coming after you, and we are going after them.
Thank you so much, Brother Ben, Sister Georgia. I really do appreciate that. And, we should all be concerned, not just about what's happening in the 11th Congressional District, but as we all know here, that when money like that, the magnitude that's coming into this district happens here, it's happening over there too. The 11th Congressional District could be anywhere in this country where oligarchs decide who's going to lead. And just because the oligarch and just because the person you run it against may be from your same, tribe, so to speak, does not mean that they are your kind. It is a difference here. It is, and we cannot allow people to come into our community and decide who our leaders are going to be and hide behind a black face. The bottom line is that having $2 million or more, it's probably going to be more than that when all is said and done. I mean, I can't even keep up with the number of super PACs that they are creating just to bump up against one little girl from Cleveland, one now grown a woman from Cleveland, just one. I mean, I keep joking. My black girl magic must be something else, baby. I mean, it must be deep, because the rapper, when he says it's going to take a nation of millions, nation of millions to hold me back. I'm starting to feel like that right now. But on a more serious note, in terms of what a real representative democracy looks like, when you have that magnitude of money coming from an oil baroness that donated, $2 million to the DMFI PAC, and they're using $1 million of it in this race. When you have a cryptocurrency billionaire from Silicon Valley decide to peek over and peer over into this district and decide to drop $1 million in, when you have these kind of blue dog status quo keeping Democrats look over into the 11th Congressional District to say, we don't want a freedom fighter to come to Congress. We don't want somebody that's going to shake things up. We don't want someone who's going to force us to look in the mirror at ourselves and determine whose side we really on. Let us dip on in the 11th Congressional District in Greater Cleveland and suppress the vote by maligning and manipulating. That should not happen anywhere in the country. And I would be saying this whether I was on the ballot or not. It is wretched, and that is why one of the worst Supreme Court decisions of our time, and there have been many bad ones, is Citizens United. And we got to do something about that. And organizations like American Promise and some others who are laser focused on trying to overturn Citizens United so that this level of money cannot pour into communities, and that you really give the voice back to the people whose voice it really is, who should be making the decision. It's a difference between getting $27 from somebody that lives, in another state and getting $2 million from singular sources who do not care about the health and well-being of anybody in the 11th Congressional District. That's right. They've never stepped foot in this district to feed the homeless, to look our children in the eye, to make sure that they're getting a good education, that their communities are safe and beautiful. They don't care about that. They only care about their singular focus, which is to keep power and control, and they will buy politicians. And it is unfortunate that one of the politicians in this race that is running is for sale, just like so many others.
And the truth shall set you free. Professor Harvey Kaye, State Senator Nina Turner, we are looking forward to supporting you. Everyone in the 11th District, go out and vote this Tuesday in that primary. Thank you both for joining us this morning.